All righty. So part 6, trigger point, Revelation 12. When I amplified this chapter in 2014, what I would do is I would read the whole chapter first at my table, and then I would never understand it in the King James Version. But then when I would amplify it word by word by word, putting those definitions of the lexicons back in place of each word, it made sense at the end, but it sounded like he repeated the story twice. I was like, okay, he just said a story, and then he just said the story again. So I said to myself, I'm never going to get this chapter. This is the weirdest chapter ever. But when I actually understood it, I was like, this is the coolest chapter ever. So if I could have put 12 somewhere in the book of Revelation, I would have put it first, because this is the trigger point to what everybody wants to know, like, are we in it? How many think that we're actually in the tribulation right now? Raise your hand. You're like, we're in it. Okay, nobody in this class does. You get on TikTok, you get on Facebook, everybody and their brother is telling us that we're in the tribulation, like we're in it, and scaring everybody to death. So, well, with all the wars, all the floods, the sharks coming up and eating people right off the bank, it's like all the pestilence, all the weird things that are going on right now, you have to wonder, like, are we getting close? Like, this is just some really bizarre stuff that's been going on here lately. So tonight I'm going to give you 2 things to look for, and they are on your overview sheet, so I've already given it away. But 2 things to look for, and I'm going to explain to you these 2 things very in depth, so you will know that you know that you know when it starts. And until those 2 things happen, we are not in the end. We're not in the final days. We've been in the end times for years, but we're not in the final days. And the final days are what I call the 3.5 years of the tribulation. So Revelation 12 is very, very vital. You have to understand it. If you don't understand the layout, that's what my job is. I'm going to make chapter 12 easy for you guys. So it's broken into 2 parts. Part 1 through 6, verse 1 through 6, is past history. It's already happened. Verse 7 on to the rest of the end of the chapter is tribulation stuff. It's future. It has not happened yet. So we're going to go over the past prophecy that has already been fulfilled in verses 1 through 6. It summarizes basically Israel and where they stand with Jesus. So using symbols in this vision, here's John. He's on the aisle, or actually now he's up in the throne room. He sees in the second heaven, which is the heaven of the stars. For those of you who have missed class before, people think there's levels of heaven because of the first heaven, second heaven, third heaven. Like when I get up there, I'm going to the 3rd floor because I was really good. That's not what first heaven, second heaven, third heaven stand for. In the Bible, first heaven is the atmospheric region of the clouds, where we are, breathe, the oxygen. Second heaven is the atmospheric region of the sun. There's planets, there's no oxygen up there, but you can still see it, some of it with your naked eye. The 3rd heaven is where God and the angels dwell, the unseen heaven. So this vision, this first part John sees, is in the starry heaven. The lexicons let me know which heaven it was in. Some translations just say heaven, and that's kind of confusing. Second heaven, where the stars and the sun and the moon is where John sees this woman, and she's pregnant. And so Israel is personified. I'm just going to go through the symbols. Israel is personified as a pregnant woman, and she has divine authority. The lexicons state that the fact that she's clothed with the sun means that she has supreme authority. This is Israel. The moon under her feet means that she has earthly authority. The 12 stars, she has like a diadem, a crown of 12 stars John sees around her head, means that her rank is above that of others. Jesus is seen as the baby that's inside of her belly. And he's about ready to be born. He's going to be born through the bloodline of the woman, Israel. So it's just all symbolic. Satan is seen standing right next to this woman, and Satan's seen as a red dragon. And he's waiting for the baby to be born. His tail swept a third of the angels from the third heaven to the earth. And we know that that was when he rebelled and he got kicked out long ago. So it talks about that. Satan wants baby Jesus dead. Hates baby Jesus because he knows he's the Messiah. So he's trying to have him killed. However, in the vision, Jesus survives. And then the next thing you see is him ascending back into the throne room to his throne. So now that you how many of you guys already knew all that? You know all that history about Israel, Jesus, Satan got kicked out, took a third of the angels. Okay, Israel's God's chosen people. So a lot of this we already know. Well, now when you read the prophecy of past prophecy already fulfilled, it'll make sense. So here we go. This is Revelation 12, 1 through 6 in the New Living Translation. Then I, John, witnessed in heaven, second heaven, an event of great significance. I saw a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon beneath her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant, and she cried out because of her labor pains and the agony of giving birth. And then I witnessed in heaven another significant event. I saw a large red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, with 7 crowns on his head. His tail swept away 1/3 of the stars in the sky. Now, stars are metaphors for angels a lot of times in the book of Revelation. And he threw them to the earth. He stood in front of the woman as she was about to give birth, ready to devour her baby as soon as it was born. She gave birth to a son who was to rule all nations with an iron rod. That's Christ. And her child was snatched away from the dragon and was caught up to God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness where God had prepared a place to care for her for 1,260 days. Well, simply put, I'm just going to recap this vision. John sees the woman, Israel, pregnant, standing in the cloud or up in the sky, and Satan's right beside her, waiting for her to give birth to Jesus. Jesus is going to be from that bloodline of Israel. Do you guys know what Satan's scheme was to make sure that Jesus died? It failed because Jesus didn't die. The decree by King Herod to have all male babies 2 years old and younger be killed. That was a scheme and it failed. Jesus lives to complete his ministry. He dies on the cross. He resurrects. He goes back on the earth for 40 days to show that he's resurrected, and then he ascends into heaven where God and the angels are. It says he's caught up. Well, when I looked up caught up, Strong's G726, the Greek word is harpazo. He was caught up into the heaven in a cloud. It is the exact same Greek word, the exact same phraseology used about the rapture, when we will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so we will be with the Lord forever. So the word caught up is when somebody is divinely and miraculously taken from this planet, changed into a spirit body, and taken into the third heaven where God and the angels reside. So that's what happened to Jesus after his, when he ascended. So Revelation 12. Verses 1 through 5 is all past history. It's about Israel, Satan, Jesus, his birth, his death, and his ascension. That's all 1 through 5 is, all past history. What I didn't understand was verse 6. I'm like, okay, I get everything but verse 6. I didn't understand that after he ascended, at some point after his ascension, which was in the year 30, the woman, which is Israel, fled into the wilderness where she was protected from the sight and presence of Satan for 1,260 days. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what was that? So I started doing research of when did Israel ever run from the city after Jesus ascended? Was there like something? And I found it. So I'm going to give you a Cliff Notes version of a story that's in history. It is in the Bible some, not a whole lot, but it is some. So here's the story of verse 6. Past history. In the year 66, Emperor Nero of the Roman Empire was doing all kinds of very shady things down in Jerusalem with the temple tax money. And the Judeans they'd had enough of giving their money that was supposed to be donated to keep the temple up. It was being shipped back up to Rome to do stuff. And so they had a revolt, and they were not cooperating with Nero. So Nero sends Vespasian, his most decorated general, with legions of Roman soldiers to go down to Judea to go down to Jerusalem to get the Judeans under control. Before he can get his troops down there, the governor of Syria at the time, which is way closer than Rome, Gaius Cestius Gallus, he was the governor. So he takes his troops down, not near as many, down to Jerusalem to try to make a name for himself and help the emperor out. Well, the Jewish people, they were ready for him. And they attacked his troops for 9 days until finally they all pulled back and were waiting for Nero's Roman legions to come down. When they pulled their troops back, every Christian in Jerusalem fled. They ran, and they ran into, most of the historians say they ran into Pella and the surrounding areas, and they hid. Well, here comes Nero's troops. They come down, they surround the city, and they won't let anybody out. Because at this point, they're ticked. Like, you had time to cooperate, you did not cooperate, now we're just going to, like, smoke you out. So they surround the city for 3.5 years. They will only let people come in during the pilgrimage feast. They will not let any Jewish people out. If anybody tried to escape, they would kill them, crucify them, hang them on posts outside of the city so that anybody up would be able to look down and see what happens when you try to escape. Or they would catapult the dead bodies back over the wall into the city. So for 3.5 years, it is just starvation and carnage, and they can't escape. After 3.5 years, the Romans breached the walls, and they destroyed the temple. By now, Nero's already dead, but a new emperor's son got the credit for attacking Jerusalem and taking it down. Not one Christian died in that. But every Orthodox Jew, every just person that stayed behind, millions were either killed or taken captive during that 3.5 years. But the Christians were divinely warned somehow by God to run. And they all fled when Cestius Gaius pulled his troops back. So that, and they says they hid in Pella for 1,260 days. They missed the whole war, and none of them died. That is a phenomenal story, and that's what verse 6 is in chapter 12. So here is verse 6. One more time it says, "And the woman fled into the wilderness where God had prepared a place to care for her for 1,260 days. So all of that is past history. How long is 1,260 days? 3.5 years, 3.45. It's right a smidgen before 3.5 years. So 1,260 has been used twice now. My last class, part 5, when we went over the 2 witnesses, and today. 1,260 is the amount of time that the Christians hid during the Jewish-Roman War. That's what that war was called when Nero came down. It was called the Jewish-Roman War. Not a hard one to remember. It was between the Jews and the Romans. 1,260 days the Christians hid during that war. The next time it's used is in the future. 1,260 days the 2 witnesses are going to be testifying on the streets of Jerusalem as well. That same 3.5, that same 1,260 days. That's not coincidence. It's almost like history's repeating itself. So I'm going to read now the second half of the prophecy because it really does sound like he repeats the same story over, but the similarities are all they are. This is literally history's going to repeat itself. Revelation 12, 7 through 17, New Living Translation. Remember, this is tribulation stuff. Then there was a war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon and his angels. And the dragon lost the battle, and he and his angels were forced out of heaven. This great dragon, the ancient serpent, called the devil or Satan, the one deceiving the whole world, was thrown down to the earth with all of his angels. And then I heard a loud voice shouting across the heavens, "It has come at last, salvation and power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ. For the accuser of our brothers and sisters has been thrown down to the earth, the one who accuses them before our God day and night. And they have defeated him by the blood of the Lamb and by their testimony. And they did not love their lives so much that they were afraid to die. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who live in the heavens, rejoice. But terror will come on the earth and the sea, for the devil has come down to you in great anger, knowing that he has little time." When the dragon realized that he had been thrown to the earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. But she was given 2 wings, like those of a great eagle, so that she could fly to the place prepared for her in the wilderness. There she would be cared for and protected from the dragon for a time, times, and half a time. Then the dragon tried to drown the woman with a flood of water that flowed from his mouth. But the earth helped her by opening its mouth and swallowing the river that gushed out of its mouth of the dragon. And the dragon was angry at the woman and declared war against the rest of her children, all who keep God's commandments and maintain their testimony for Jesus. That part, there's some similarities that make it sound like he's repeated the same story with just some variations. That's all going to happen in the future. And so we're going to work through it, and I'm going to show you. So there are 9 similarities from the first time it happened way back in the Jewish-Roman War and what's going to happen in the tribulation. From these prophecies, I'm just going to read them to you. Satan is seen as a dragon in both prophecies. Satan's eviction from heaven is addressed in both prophecies. Satan hates the Jewish nation of Israel in both prophecies. The Jewish nation of Israel is who Jesus came from in both prophecies. The Christians who flee are called the woman because not all of Israel fled. So Israel is the pregnant woman in the vision, but it says, then the woman fled into the wilderness where she was protected and cared for 1,260 days. If you know that story, not all of Israel fled. So woman that fled is a metaphor for the Christians in Israel that fled. So in the second prophecy, when the woman flees, if it's going to be the same thing, then it's going to be the Christians in Jerusalem in the end times that flee are going to be the ones that are kept safe. So the Christians who flee are called the woman in both. Satan pursues the woman in both prophecies. God aids her escape and gives her a place to hide for 3.5 years in both prophecies. The Christians who flee all live, which that's a really cool promise for the future tribulation for those over there that flee. And the wars are both 3.5 years long. A lot of you guys have been taught, as I was, that the tribulation is going to be 7 years long. It's 3.5 years long. And so that's why both wars, the Jewish-Roman War and the tribulation, are both going to be 3.5 years long with so many similarities. It's crazy. But here's the differences that let me know that these are 2 different prophecies. Number 1, according to the lexicon, the first vision when he saw the pregnant woman in the clouds, it was the second starry heaven. The second vision where Archangel Michael and the good angels fight with Satan and the bad angels, it's in the third heaven. It's a completely different place that this vision is seen. The one that you can't see is the third heaven. In the first vision, Satan is cast to the earth. We know when Satan was cast to the earth, he tempted Adam and Eve. A third of the angels came with him. That's past history, right? But do you guys know that he still has access to the throne room to accuse us before God day and night? He doesn't have authority. He doesn't have position, but he has limited access. Just read the book of Job. He was up there saying, God was like, where did you come from? He's like, from wandering to and fro on the earth. So he has access to the throne room to accuse people. When this second battle happens and Archangel Michael and the good angels boot him out, he's evicted. He is no longer ever allowed back in there to accuse anybody ever again. Number 3, in the first vision, no Christians in the story died. In the Jewish-Roman War, every single Christian that fled lived. It's in the history books. In the tribulation, any Christian that flees is promised, like the Jewish-Roman War, that he's going to protect her for a time, times on half a time. But there's going to be 144,000 marked by God from the bloodline of Jacob, Christians that do not flee. They are the martyrs of the tribulation, so there's a difference in the second one. There will be Christians that die in the tribulation that stay back. And number 4, nothing is mentioned in the first vision about the devil being enraged because he only has a little time left. But in the second one, he only has 3.5 years to do his thing. So he's got to start getting his plan of action together quickly once he's kicked out. So in his rage, Satan's rage, because he only has 3.5 years before the tribulation is over, it says he's going to go after the Jewish nation of Israel. That's where the tribulation is going to be focused on, not Dallas. Just like the Jewish-Roman War, he went after Jerusalem. He went after Jerusalem specifically. So in the past war, Satan used Caesar Nero. Emperor Nero was a horrible, horrible man who hated Christians and killed many, many, would dip them in pitch, light them on fire, and strap them to posts in his imperial garden and burn them like night lights at night. So he was horrible. Anyway, Satan used him as a pawn in the year 66 to go down there and start the Jewish-Roman War. Now, Nero did not finish it because he committed suicide in 68. He was basically an enemy of the state by the Roman Senate, so he took his life before they could. But he started it. He started the Jewish-Roman War in 66 AD. He went after Jerusalem. He went after the inhabitants, and then I said the woman fled, which was the Christians. They fled. So we know from history somewhat of what the tribulation should be like. If John did not put these two prophecies in the same chapter for no reason, he put them in there so that we would catch it. Catch how similar the tribulation is going to be to the events of the Jewish-Roman War. So in the future tribulation, Satan's going to use the Antichrist, where in the past he used Nero. Future, Antichrist. The past, Nero goes after Jerusalem. Future, Antichrist goes after Jerusalem. Past, the women flee, Christians. In the future, the women are going to flee. They're going to be divinely warned, just like they were back then. Past, every Christian lives. Future, every Christian that flees lives. So similar. Let's see. So the vision in the throne room of that battle between Archangel Michael and Satan is your trigger point. The bummer for us is that we can't see that happen. We're not going to know necessarily when that battle happens. So that's like the unseen event that starts it. But when Satan is evicted and he's enraged, he's going to make his first move very public. And that will be the thing that we can see. And that's what I'm going to teach you tonight, what to look for. The things that are going to happen that we can tangibly see on this planet that let us know Satan got booted. Satan's eviction happened because now he's putting his pawns in place. And if you know what those are, then you're going to know when the tribulation has started. That's kind of comforting to me. I want to know. So here's the main things that we're going to see. All right, let's see. We're going to see the statue of the Antichrist of the end times. It's going to be built. It's going to be placed in the holy place, which is a room of the third temple. Part of it has to be rebuilt. We went over that before. When they rebuild the third temple, in chapter 11, it tells us 3 parts that get built. The Holy of Holies is going to get rebuilt. The holy place, which is the room right outside of the Holy of Holies, is going to get rebuilt. And the court of the priest is going to get rebuilt. The outer court is not going to get rebuilt. The Antichrist is going to have a statue made of him. It's going to be placed in that second room called the holy place. That is something that we can tangibly see. The temple could be built next week. That's not the trigger point. The trigger point is when the statue goes in the holy place. That's when people are divinely warned in Matthew, and I'm going to read it. Matthew 24, 15 through 22, New King James Version. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, whosoever reads, let him understand. Then let them who are in Judea, lets us know, same place as Jewish war. When you are in that area of Jerusalem, Judea area, then let them that are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let him who is on the housetop not go down to take anything out of his house. And let him who is in the field not go back to get his clothes. But woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days. Pray that your flight may not be in winter or on the Sabbath. For then there will be great tribulation, such as not been since the beginning of the world until this time. No, nor ever shall be. And unless those days were shortened, no flesh should be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. When I look up the word elect in the lexicon, well, actually it's the Vines Expository Bible Dictionary, Strong's G 1588, eklektos is the word. Believers, Jews and Gentiles. Matthew 24, 22, and 24. Christian Jews and Christian Gentiles, for their sake, the tribulation is going to be shortened. Does that tell you anything about the timing of the rapture? For those of you like me that were taught we're not going to be here for it, you have to reconsider your stance when there's definitions that point blank say, and scriptures, no flesh would be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days are going to be shortened. And then I'm going to read Matthew 24. I'm going to read the next couple verses, 23 and 24. Then if anybody says to you, look, here's the Christ, or there, don't believe it. For false Christ and false prophets will rise and show great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect, even the believers, Jews and Gentiles. That's your false prophet and your Antichrist doing signs and wonders and miracles, trying to deceive believers because they're going to be on the planet. So, but the Christians in Judea who heed the warnings of Matthew 24, they know the scripture. They're going to know when to run, and they're going to run. You wonder what the divine warning was back in the Jewish-Roman War when Cassius Gaius pulled all of his troops back, and all of those Christians ran. Do you think that maybe they thought Matthew 24 was going to happen? They didn't stick around to see if the statue was going to go up. They just probably thought, this is it. And they took off. And it saved every single one of their lives. Christians in the future know Matthew 24. Jewish, Messianic Jews know the Bible. So they're going to know when it's time to run. It says in Matthew 24 that they're going to, when they see that statue go in the holy place, it says, don't even come down and get your coat. Just get out of there because it's started. So number one trigger point we are looking for, if they show it on the news or if you follow, like there's websites, it's Jewish websites where they keep you up on the news. If you follow any of those and you hear about the third temple going up, just antenna up. Don't panic, because that doesn't mean anything yet. When you hear a statue going up of a dude in the holy place that's in control over there because he's making a rampage move against the Middle East, we're in it. Until then, we're not in it. So, sigh of relief here. It said Satan's going to send something like a flood in the future after the Christians that flee. And when I looked up the word flood, it didn't say anything other than flood, like a water. Because I thought maybe it's like a flood from his mouth, like some sort of propaganda attack. And it just said flood. And so when I amplify stuff from lexicons, I don't change it. I just plagiarize it. So I'm assuming there's going to be something like a flood that goes after the Christians that flee. And then it says the earth opens and swallows up the flood. Okay, well, God split the earth open before and swallowed up Korah and his rebellious group back with Moses, so he can crack the earth and swallow up a bunch of water and save the Christians that are fleeing. He can do all kinds of miraculous things. But in both wars, he says he's going to give the Christians, the woman, a place to hide for 3.5 years where he's going to protect her and care for her, and she is going to live. It's pretty cool. He did it before, he can do it again. All right, so here's the thing. In the future, when Satan realizes he can't get to the woman because she's fled, it says he comes back to wage war against the rest of her children. Well, who are the rest of Israel's children? It would be the 144,000, the Orthodox Jews. He's coming after them. So anybody that stays in Jerusalem during the tribulation is going to be the focal target point of the Antichrist of the end times and his kingdom and his power that he's going to resurrect. The 144,000 are going to be victims of that because they're the ones that don't flee. They're going to stay behind and literally lay down their lives for the cause. They're going to be testifying during that whole time and become the martyrs of the tribulation that we know. So that's the story. Now I'm going to review the prophecy, plugging in all of the things to the symbols that we know. So as I reread it with all the details, the prophecy is going to come to life for the tribulation. It's going to make a lot of sense. So remember, this is all future. This is the trigger point to tribulation stuff. Revelation 12, I'm going to do 7 through 17. New Living Translation. Then there was a war in heaven, the third heaven, where God and the angels reside. Michael and his angels, the good angels, fought against the dragon and his angels, the fallen angels. And the dragon lost the battle, and he and his angels were forced out of heaven, out of the third heaven, where God and the angels reside. This great dragon, the ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, the one deceiving the whole world, was thrown down to the earth with all of his angels. This is his eviction. Then I heard a loud voice shouting from the heavens, "It has come at last, salvation and power in the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ. For the accuser of our brothers and sisters has been thrown down to earth, the one who accuses them before our God day and night. He is no longer allowed up there, guys." All right. So that like I said, that's your initial unseen trigger point. And unlike the Jewish war where no Christians died, we do have 144,000 martyrs that will in the tribulation. The next verse acknowledges them. Verse 11 says, "And they, the martyrs of the tribulation, have defeated him by the blood of the Lamb and by their testimony, and they did not love their lives so much that they were afraid to die. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who live in the heavens rejoice. But terror will come to the earth and the sea, for the devil has come down to you in great anger, knowing that he has a little time, because he has 3.5 years to do his worst. When the dragon realized that he had been thrown down to the earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. So he's going to focus his rage on the Jewish nation of Israel. Let's see. But she, the Christians in Israel, was given 2 wings like those of a great eagle, so that she, the Christians, could fly to a place prepared for her in the wilderness. Okay, I just want to stop there real fast. A lot of people are making assumptions that that's America in C-130s, flying over there and pulling them out because she was given 2 wings of a great eagle, and we have an eagle on our corn. So that's really stretching. That's called eisegeting the text. That's where you put your I see and I think, therefore I teach. The lexicon didn't say it's America at all in here. It said it was divine aid, angelic help. So the Christians that are going to flee in the future are going to be given angelic help to escape to a place prepared for her in the wilderness. There she, the Christians, would be cared for and protected from the dragon for a time, times, and half a times, which is 3.5 years, which is the length of the tribulation. And then the dragon tried to drown the woman with the flood of water that flowed from his mouth. Like I said, I think it was just a flood. And the earth helped her by opening its mouth and swallowing the river that gushed out of the mouth of the dragon. And the dragon was angry at the woman. That's the Christians who escaped, or who will escape, and declared war against the rest of her children, all who keep God's commandments and maintain their testimony for Jesus. Okay, well, right there it said the rest of her children are the ones who keep God's commandments and maintain their testimony for Jesus. That's your 144,000. That's your Christian Jews. He's going after them. So does that prophecy make sense now? Yeah, a little bit better if you just read it in King James. All right. So we're watching for Satan's pawns to show up, and we're watching for God's pawns to show up. Satan has 2, and God has 2. You've got like a little unholy trinity, Satan, Antichrist, false prophet. You've got Jesus Christ got his 2, your 2 witnesses. So when you see a dude come back from the dead, because we're going to get into that in part 7. When you see a guy come back from the dead, and they make a statue of him, and they put it in the holy place in Jerusalem, and this statue is given life and the ability to speak, and then it's demanded that it be worshipped, and then all of a sudden this mark of the beast is put out there where you have to pledge your allegiance to this thing, you're in it. When you see the false prophet, he's the one that's going to promote the building of the statue. You're going to see these 2 team up together. You're in it. Well, also, part 2, when you see 2 Old Testament dressed dudes in sackcloth standing in the streets of Jerusalem, testifying of the coming kingdom for 1,260 days, which is the length that they're going to live, which is just shy of the 3.5-year mark. And they can breathe fire to protect themselves, and they're calling down trumpet judgments of God, which we're going to get into that soon. And they're unkillable until they're completely done with their 1,260-day assignment. But when you see them show up in Jerusalem, and you're going to know it's them when they start breathing fire, we're in it. Until you see those pawns show up, guys, we're in the birth pains. We're not in the tribulation of the end times. So when you see the TikTok and the Facebook, like we're in the tribulation, no, we're not. Absolutely, those 4 people are not on the planet yet. And the abomination of desolation, a lot of people are like, what is that? That's the statue. That's another name for the statue that's going to be placed in the holy place. That's not there yet. And that's when people are told to run. So those are the 2 main things that I wanted to teach you tonight, is like really what to look for so that you can take a breath. And last week, Lenny asked me a question. She said, where does America fit into this? I'm going to just touch on it, but we might go into a little bit more in part 7. What I want to say is the lexicons, when I studied the lexicons, the tribulation does not spearhead from America. Okay, and you're going to find out next week where it spearheads from. America's not even mentioned in any of the lexicons at all. But all kinds of cities over around Israel, around the Mediterranean Sea, in Syria, in Iraq, like Turkey, like different places are point blank mentioned as being spots in the tribulation. USA, never, and none of the cities in the USA. So where do we fall into it? Here's what I have to say. I don't know. There's wars going on in Israel right now. What are we doing? We're having Bible study because we're not military. We're not over there fighting. We're just doing life. Is it going to be like that? I don't know. If we go get a president that sides with Israel, then we might go to war. Our soldiers, our country soldiers, might go to war against the Antichrist and his armies. And then I don't know what that'll look like for us. If our president sides with the Antichrist, then we're going to be under the mark of the beast and all the rules of the Antichrist. But if he doesn't side with the Antichrist and we go against the Antichrist, we're not going to be under his rules. No more than we're under the Korea and Saudi's rules. I mean, we are under our president's rules. So there's a lot of waiting to see when it starts, who our president is, and how much he involves us, and what team he puts us on is going to really determine how much America is going to play into any of the stuff. So, but it doesn't start here in the USA at all. So that's chapter 12. That's the trigger point. Satan's going to get the boot, the eviction. Here's what I think is cool. Like, after I understand all of this, I'm like, oh, no wonder. So when John went into the throne room in chapter 4 and 5, and he didn't see the church up there, he didn't see a bunch of Christians up there. He didn't see any Christians other than the 24 elders. He saw no other disembodied human spirits than those 24, which begs the question, where are they? But if Satan's up there accusing us, that'd be really awkward. There's a bunch of Christians up there worshiping, and then there's Satan up there. Satan had already gotten the boot when John went into the throne room to take a peek at it, because he wasn't up there. So that's when the tribulation is going to start. Satan's out, and now as martyrs start being killed, they go up into the throne room. They start accumulating up there. How awkward would it be if Satan was still up there and then the martyrs are accumulating? So I'm like, yeah, he is evicted for good. And that's when the tribulation is going to start. And then we've got martyrs that are going to accumulate. So if you have your question and answers in the back and you want to write down, we're only going to do 2 question and answers tonight. So turn to question 44 of your question and answers. And the question is, what is the abomination of desolation that is going to be put in the holy place? Anyone? Statue of the Antichrist. Statue of the Antichrist. It is an abominable idol that is going to desecrate the temple. The abomination of desolation. Number 45. Does the third temple being built mark the beginning of the tribulation? Yes or no? No. Doesn't mark the beginning. It has to be up before the statue can go in it. But that thing could stand for 5 years. The Jews could go back to sacrificing. They've already got the red heifers, supposedly. You know, you never know how much media you can trust. Apparently, they've got red heifers. They've got the Levitical priesthood people taking their classes so that they can start doing sacrifices again. They just don't have the temple. So it's like they're getting ready for everything. The Temple Institute has had everything they need to rebuild that temple and can probably put it up in about 3 days They've got everything walled, everything. They just don't have permission to get up on the Temple Mount. So we're kind of waiting and watching for that, but it doesn't mark the beginning of the tribulation when that thing gets built. It's just something that does have to happen. So there's no class next week. It's on your schedules, but it's because it's corporate worship night. It's the first Wednesday night of each month. But we're going to meet back here for part 7 on July 10th. It's on your schedule. It's the second Wednesday of July. Let's see. We're going to need the full hour and a half. This is going to be the one class where I think I'm going to take the full 7 to 8:30, get here early. You are not going to be allowed to pick up your papers because we're going to be talking about the identity of the Antichrist and the false prophet, and I want you just to listen, and then you can pick up your notes after class. So I'm going to hide them up here. But here are some of the questions that are going to be answered on July 10th for part 7. You do not want to miss this one. Ready? Who is the Antichrist? Is he alive right now? How does the Antichrist die before he comes back to life? In 2 Thessalonians 2, 6, and 8, it says that the restrainer has to be removed before the Antichrist can be revealed. Who's the restrainer? Who is the second beast seen coming up out of the earth? Is the mark of the beast a computer chip? Why is the mark of the beast 666? Can somebody accidentally take the mark of the beast? Is there a way to remove the mark of the beast if you change your mind? Will it be possible for people to take the mark of the beast and end up getting saved in the tribulation? So like you took it and then you're like, oopsie poops, got saved. Is that going to be possible? Is the beast of Revelation a person or a system of government? When the beast rises up out of the sea, is it a literal sea or a metaphor for something? What do the 7 heads of the beast stand for? Because when he rises up, he's got 7 heads and 10 horns. So we're going to get into what do the 10 horns stand for. Who's the woman riding on the beast and why is she called a whore? We're going to answer that one. If the Antichrist signs a 7-year peace treaty with Israel, why is that never mentioned in Revelation? If the tribulation is 7 years long, which is 84 months, why does Revelation say the Antichrist only has 42 months, which is 3.5 years? And one more. If the Antichrist brings in 3.5 years of peace before breaking that peace treaty, why are neither of those things mentioned in the book of Revelation? So it's going to be a very, very huge class. All very important questions, all things that are going to be then written in the back of your question and answers. So when you come to work and some guy in the booth next to you in a little cubicle starts talking stuff, you're just like, no, wrong. Let me just get you my little notes. No. So you feel like you have like, nope. So I will see you all in a couple weeks. But are there any questions? Because we have a microphone. Where is Daniel? Okay.
So is Daniel separate from Revelation? Because, okay, what I'm thinking is the 7 years. Because people get 7 years from the book of Daniel, right?
Yes, they did. One verse.
So what is it that differentiates that 7 years that is in Daniel from it being or not being 7 years in Revelation?
The bonus teaching? Because I'm like, there's a lot of people that have heard 7 years, but have actually never done the research to find out where that came from. And if you type in 7-year tribulation in your Google search, you will find that entire teaching is based off of one Old Testament verse. That should be a red flag in itself. So that's what I'm going to do on the bonus teaching. So August 7th, that question will get answered for sure, for sure. In order to teach you guys the full on what she just said, I have to teach you the whole 70 weeks of Daniel teaching. And I have that already on YouTube. You can do the 70 weeks of Daniel worksheet. It's in my topical teachings. But I wanted to try, this is Revelation made easy. And some from the people that went through that one, they're like, well, it's kind of easy, but it's kind of not. So I'm going to try to make even my bonus teachings easy. So that's why I'm rewriting and just trying to tackle that topic a different way. But yes, way back there, Matt.
So just with where we are now, I can't help but think maybe the image of the Antichrist may be more related to AI. So I don't know if you thought about that at all.
Yep.
Or
the fact that the image is given life, the statue is going to be given the life by Satan through the false prophet. And then it's going to be given the ability to speak. And then it's going to demand to be worshiped. I wonder with AI and the technology that is coming about, if it's not going to be some of that technology that the enemy uses to program this thing so that it can be like it's real. Because back when this was written, that wasn't even a thing. That wasn't. But the technology that they have now, it's very possible. Yeah. But it is going to be a statue that is inanimate at first. And then it is given life. And then it is given the ability to speak after it is created. I will pray you guys out and bless you. And then I will see you back here for, Corporate Wednesday. But then I'll see you for Rev class July 10th. Check your calendars. All right. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for Revive Church. And for Pastor Shannon letting me teach Revelation. And Father, I just want to pray blessings on him as he is at camp, Lord. And just speak through him, Lord, to those children. Father, I just want to pray blessings over everybody here. And I just want to pray that they'll continue to listen to your voice, Father, and grow close to you during this time. In your precious name I pray, Lord. Amen. All right, y'all, you are free to go.